We've been producing engaging content for the engineering community for over 3 years, interviewing industry leaders like John Hirschtick, the founder of SolidWorks, our very own engineering manager, Michael Hadley, and numerous engineers, product developers, and business professionals. But now, we want to hear from the most important people, our listeners. Click the survey link in the show notes below to share your advice and help us grow the Being an Engineer podcast. Plus, by participating, you have a chance to win an exclusive Being an Engineer t-shirt. Submissions close Tuesday, October 3rd. 5 winners will be chosen and announced in our newsletter on Wednesday, October 4th.
And so we've got a challenge to figure out how do we keep our vehicle to, the gross vehicle weight to something that is reasonable to still tow, but also provide all that functionality that we've been talking about.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Being an Engineer podcast. Our guest today is Troy Nergaard, who has a bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering. Troy has held roles ranging from project engineer to CEO and is currently the head of controls and embedded systems at Lightship, where he and his team are designing and producing an aerodynamic, battery-powered trailer that liberates travelers from the noise, emissions, and range anxiety of gas RVing. Troy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Aaron.
Well, what made you decide to become an engineer?
Yeah, I think it's because my dad told me he didn't want me to take over his restaurant business. Is
that something you were contemplating?
Well, I don't know. At that age, he told me that early on. But I really, so that's sort of me looking for other options and what did I like to do? But I do have to give some credit to my dad, who I watched, as a restaurateur, like get his hands, not be afraid to get his hands dirty, he is quite mechanically inclined, and if something broke, he was willing to take it apart and fix it. And more than half the time he was able to fix it, and so that saved him a lot of money. But also saw that how things were made sometimes when I would watch him or just be around him. And so that was the beginning of it. I also like a lot of engineers enjoyed Legos and puzzles and a lot of the usual things. But I think another thing I might contribute to it is I started building and racing RC cars kind of, I don't know exactly, maybe around 10 or 12, somewhere in the 10 to 12 range. Maybe it was because I wasn't a good racer, good at the racing part, but I actually liked building them more. It really was cool to sort of really, and it's where I learned a lot about servos and motors and even batteries to some extent. Those were electric, so it was my first electric vehicle, really, was my RC car. So
very cool. I'm just curious, what kind of restaurant did your dad own, or restaurants?
Yeah, it was a family restaurant. It had a variety of food. Started off as a pizza place mostly, but it sort of evolved over time to have everything from breakfast to dinner. So
got it. All right.
I worked there plenty, but ultimately I'm happy with my career choice.
Terrific. All right. Well, you were a senior engineering manager at Tesla. You were also CEO at one point, not at Tesla, but at another company, and were also an advisor for several other companies. Something tells me that you probably have a lot of options open to you as far as where you want to work. What made you want to work at Lightship?
Well, I appreciate that. There's certainly a lot of good engineers out there, so finding an interesting job is not something that I take for granted. But I had the luxury of, taking some time and really looking around, when I was looking for my current role. And I was looking for a company where I could make an impact. I care a lot about the environment and sort of working in a way to help improve climate change. And so I knew I kind of wanted to stay in that clean tech space. I started talking to some of my network, and kind of heard the Lightship name get thrown out there. Turns out I knew some of them from my early days at some of my days at Tesla, including the co-founder Toby. And I think this is really what sold me. I started talking to him, and at first I was not sold on RVing being a being something that is going to make an impact. But turns out the market's much bigger than I expected, and the vision for the product was more than just an RV, and so that really got me excited. And so talking to Toby, sort of re-engaging with him, really reminded me what a great leader he is, what a great person he is. And then I also got a chance to talk to Ben, the other co-founder, and he's the one with the original vision, and that really, it was clear he was passionate about what we're trying to do. And so that all sort of got me really excited about what Lightship was doing. And I think the last piece would be just that it was an early stage at that point. When I joined, it was 7 people in early 2022. And I really would have an opportunity to help shape the company, both from an engineering point of view as well as from a cultural point of view. So that was also exciting to me.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Tell us a little bit about the background with Lightship and its flagship product, the L1. What's the backstory?
Yeah, well, this really sort of starts from the food truck world, actually, and Ben sort of noticing as he was eating at food trucks every day that they were noisy, they were polluting, and here you are trying to have a lunch next to them, and there was really no reason for that, and so his idea started: how could I replace that that generator, that diesel or gasoline generator, with the battery pack and power system that could easily supply power for all the appliances needed on board a food truck. He started looking into that, a little bit more, and realized, well, that would be great. The market's not huge. What else is similar? And then that led him towards sort of RV space, which is much larger. And originally with the idea of just replacing the generator on an RV, so that was the first prototype that was built, was a small sort of packaged, sort of drop-in replacement for a generator that would give you equivalent power output with a low battery pack and inverter. And he built a prototype like that, and that was sort of the very beginning of Lightship. It was made clear, though, also that that in itself, the sort of drop-in replacement for a generator wasn't going to be enough, and that really to sort of make things better and shake it up a little bit more is, we need to design something from the ground up. And so he found Toby. They went on a big road trip in an RV, pulling an RV with an electric vehicle. And there's a whole story on our website about that. That's interesting to read. But, out of that came Lightship and, the vision to let's do this from the ground up. Let's do it better in many ways. And, and we've been working at it now for a couple of years and have a long way to go, but have made huge progress.
Terrific. That's a great backstory. And I like kind of the little tie-in with the restaurateur. I mean, if you consider food trucks in the restaurant business, that's cool. Well, so Lightship's flagship product is the L1, which is a fully electric RV, and it has some pretty cool bells and whistles, which we'll get into. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the major bullet points that separates the L1 from your traditional RV? Yeah,
sure. The first one, as already mentioned, it is all electric. There are no generators. There's no propane heaters, and so this is serving electricity for all loads. That's including your we have an induction cooktop, refrigerators. Anything you have in there would be electrically powered. So that's sort of the key. But I think it's also, built from the ground up with efficiency and utility in mind. So we're not looking to give up utility, but we're also looking to make it extremely efficient in many ways, right? And that's, in towing, as well as in operation, during camping. And so, a lot of us are coming from the automotive side, particularly from the electric vehicle side, and, really care about efficiency and that, sort of plays into the aerodynamics of the vehicle, as well as just, the power system, how it's designed and how that energy is used, how we manage energy on board the vehicle with loads, and still give customers a great experience and all the luxuries they might want while camping. the last thing, which is maybe the most interesting and the most unique, perhaps, is the propulsion system. So this is a travel trailer, mind you. So there's still a tow vehicle involved, but it has the propulsion system on it, and so that can help you assist the tow vehicle when you're pulling your trailer. And the goal there is really to help EVs minimize range loss when towing. Now it'll help a ICE vehicle as well, and we certainly encourage uses of we're agnostic to the tow vehicle for sure, but really looking to promote the adoption of electric vehicles, especially as there become more trucks on the market, and things that can actually tow. We really want to make that experience just as good as it would be in a standard traditional gasoline engine vehicle. And so we added this propulsion system to provide an assist while towing.
Which is awesome, right? Because range anxiety is certainly something that people think about with EVs, especially on road trips. So that's a big bonus. The software and controls associated with the L1 are kind of a big part of what sets it apart from other RVs. What are a few of the software features that you're most proud of, being kind of in charge of that department, and that you think users will most appreciate?
Yeah, I think the big one overall to start with, and we can dive in deeper in some of this, but is just the integration, how well integrated it's going to be. There are a lot of trailers out there and RVs in general that have disparate systems, for everything. We intend to have a user interface, similar to a lot of modern vehicles where you can control almost everything. This will be a single interface that's well designed, well integrated, give you status, let you control, everything from lights to, your air conditioning to your, locking your door, and so this is really a combination of automotive and smart home kind of coming together, in a completely integrated way. And so behind all of that is software, and kind of low voltage electronics and controllers that will allow you to understand the status of are your windows open? Can I level your vehicle automatically based on, just a touch of a button? So, these are all things that we can kind of do when we have controls and software and, linking to touching a lot of pieces of the vehicle. So we'll have a variety of controllers spread out through the vehicle that will give us information and allow us to actuate or understand status, information on various pieces of it.
The auto leveling is a pretty cool feature. I didn't realize that's something that Lightship had. Is that on a single axis or two axes, or like independently controlled by quadrant or something?
All good questions. This feature is sort of still in development, but the hope is that it is, on two axes, so that we would, left to right and front to back.
Nice.
Able to level your vehicle completely, sort of automatically. So, that's the hope. We're definitely working towards that idea.
Okay. All right. Well, we won't hold you to that one then. It's still in development.
Yeah.
What are a few of the mechanical features that really separate the L1 from your traditional RV?
I think there's maybe three key pieces there. One is, and they're kind of tied together in some ways. The first one though is the lift, the canopy, what we call a canopy lift. So our trailer, telescopes. It's not the first trailer to do this. We give credit to the high-low that was designed back in the 70s, if I've got my dates right. So there's definitely vehicles out there, but ours is done in a slightly different way, and it's done for maybe different reasons. I mean, maybe similar reasons, but really is back to my aero comment earlier about how we're really focused on efficiency, and so aerodynamics when towing are so important. And so the ability to collapse the vehicle while you're towing it makes a huge difference in frontal area and ultimately drag losses, especially at cruising speeds. And so our vehicle, when you're towing it, is only 6 to 7 feet tall, kind of off the ground. But then when you camp, you raise the canopy all the way up, and it's actually quite tall then. And this leads me to sort of the second point that you might notice is the headroom inside the vehicle when you're camping. It's like no other, trailer out there. I believe, even in the shower, you've got, at least for an average height person, there's sufficient headroom, which if you've ever been in a travel trailer, some of those showers are even, I'm not that tall, but I'm bending over a little bit to get in there and get my head wet. So, it really feels bigger than it is because of that. And doesn't feel as cramped. The third piece, which sort of also plays into, sort of the feeling inside, is the windows. We are trying to bring you're out in nature most of the time, and you should not be sort of boxed in and not be able to enjoy that just because you're inside your vehicle. Similar to a tent with, full sort of screens that you can see out all over if you don't have your rainfly over it. This is the same concept. We've got windows on all sides almost, and just giving you 360 views of your surroundings, which might be amazing. You're in a national park. Let's look at that, all evening, and really get a sense of, being in nature, even though you are actually inside of a vehicle. So the windows, I think, are the other big piece that, ties us all together.
Yeah. And this is probably a good place to mention that the Lightship L1 is not, it does not look like your typical RV. I mean, this is, it's beautiful. It's like a piece of art. And, it's not like that typical sheet metal boxy shape. It's completely different, like nothing you've ever seen, at least nothing I've ever seen in an RV. So for those of you who haven't seen it, definitely encourage you to go to the website and check it out, which is, I think, lightshiprv.co.
.com. Right? Yeah, lightshiprv.com.
.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, the ship part of it, kind of, it looks a little bit, in some cases, like a rocket ship if you tilt it in a certain direction. So it's, it's a ship in different forms.
Yeah, it looks high tech for sure. On the website, it says that we started with aero principles to create a near zero range loss for EVs, and you talked about that a little bit already with the power system that it has. Talk a little bit more about the aerodynamics, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. As I stated, aerodynamics is a huge focus for us. It's really a core principle of our design. You may look at the design as you referenced just a second ago, and think it's beautiful. And it is. There's no doubt about it. But that shape is really driven by aerodynamics. The core shape is all aero. And so, in order to achieve our goal of ultimately, zero range loss for an EV while towing, we knew that aero was critical to reduce drag. Particularly, again, at highway speeds where the cube, it's the cube of velocity that really drives the drag losses. So, your losses at highway speeds are extremely high, and it's really, accounting for the majority of them. And so the amount that you can reduce that really has a huge impact to range. And so aero, we have nothing protruding from the vehicle. Again, it sort of plays into the look of it, but it is really for aero. The reason that there's no, the AC unit's not sitting on top of the vehicle like it commonly is. It's, we don't have anything sticking out from the vehicle, and that's all for aero reasons. Even though it also, sort of fits well with aesthetics. And then of course that last piece, which we talked about a little bit also, related to zero range loss, is the electric powertrain. And really trying to negate that the remaining drag after you've done what you can on the aero side, the remaining drag, from aero and also from, things like rolling resistance and other loss components. We'll try to negate that out by basically assisting your trailer to sort of keep up with your tow vehicle. You can kind of think of it as, where you hitch, over the ball, you're hitched on. How do you have, sort of almost not touch the ball while you're moving along the road? Yeah. That's basically what you want to do. You want to just sort of be really loose there and not have one pulling the other an extreme amount. So that's our goal. And
that's amazing.
It's going to be a challenge, no doubt about it, to get that completely, to get that perfect. But I think we've got a good start, and I'm really excited to work on that part of it.
Amazing. Great. Well, let me take a short break here and share with everyone that teampipeline.us is where you can learn more about how we help medical device and other product engineering or manufacturing teams develop turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines to characterize, inspect, assemble, manufacture, and perform verification testing on your devices. We're speaking with Troy Nergaard today, head of controls and embedded systems at Lightship. So Troy, the L1 is outfitted with a large array of solar panels on its roof. What all do they power? You talked a little bit about this already, but maybe let's go into it even further. What do they power? How long does a full charge last? How long can we be out in the wilderness glamping effectively, right, with all the creature comforts? And how long does it take to recharge those batteries?
Yeah, well, there's the answer to the first question is what can the solar power? It really can power anything out of the vehicle, and that's whether that's directly or indirectly. What I mean by that is directly, our solar system is going to be 12 volts connected, and so any of your 12 volt loads, these are pretty standard, RV loads that you might have. Some lights are even 12 volts, and so those loads sort of can ultimately power them directly if you've got solar power coming in. But we also have a high voltage system on this vehicle, which is a bit different than others. And we can, if we have excess solar that we don't need for those 12 volt loads or we don't need for the 12 volt battery, we can boost that up to the high voltage level to our high voltage battery, which stores a lot more energy and ultimately store that solar power, for later. Or if, we happen to be towing, as we talked about and the propulsion system is active, you're driving down, the interstate and the sun is blaring on you, in the south or something, which would be a common scenario as in an RV. You might as well use that solar power to, sort of support your drivetrain. So, even boosting it up to the high voltage and then ultimately using that energy, for your assist, is certainly possible with the way our solar system is set up. So, those solar panels, yes, can ultimately power anything. They can help you boondock, which is sort of the RV term for going off grid, out in sort of Forest Service territory. They can help you do that for longer if there's sun, of course, or if you're not under trees tree cover, can limit that. But those can help you stay, we'd say, at least for a week, on battery power. So you could be boondocking for a week between your high voltage battery and the solar that you might be getting. There's plenty of energy to keep you going, even though all the loads are electric. And so we're talking about approximately 2 kilowatts of solar on the roof. That's without the solar awnings. And if we add our solar awnings as an option, then it's closer to 3 kilowatts. So really
nice.
Quite a bit of power from solar. Whereas, typical RVs today where you see small panels on the roof, many of them have them, but they are more like hundreds of watts, not kilowatts. And again, back to Aero, ours are completely integrated with the rooftop so that there's nothing protruding, on the top during towing.
Nice. I think the solar at my house is only 5 or 6 kilowatts. Yeah. So that's 3 kilowatts. That's pretty great for an RV.
And my home solar is only like 4 kilowatts, so it's sort of close to the same.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it is quite a lot, and we hope that will really allow our customers to be flexible with where they're going and what they're doing. It's pretty awesome that we can do that and be pretty flexible. So as far as how long it takes to recharge batteries, I think that was your last question, if I'm not mistaken. That again sort of depends on what you got available. What the sun is doing, where you are, what time of year it is. So it's all sort of a function of a lot of pieces. And it also depends on the size of the pack. We're ultimately going to offer 2 different battery pack sizes. One that is larger, that would be paired with the electric drivetrain, and then one that is smaller that may not have the drive option, but would still have the solar. That one could charge faster, certainly.
Got it. Okay. Speaking of charging, is there bi-directional charging between the L1 and if you're towing with an EV?
Yeah, so we can certainly charge your EV from our vehicle. That is definitely in the design. We will have a standard NEMA outlet that it would be accommodate a charge cord of that's pretty standard charge cord outlet to plug an EV into us. Going the other way is possible too if the vehicle allows it. Not as many EVs would do that, but there are some out there that certainly do, and so you could technically do that as well. So yeah, I definitely have thought about how do we give you some charge maybe from that solar, using some of that solar power again to power your tow vehicle, and at least get you to the next charge station, from after being in the woods for a while.
Yeah. If the L1 is out of charge, can it still be towed? You don't need to have that propulsion system in order to travel?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, you absolutely do not. Whether you choose to buy it as the option, or like I mentioned, even one of the versions will not have it at all. And so you certainly don't need to use it. And if you have it and your battery happens to be depleted, no problem at all. We've designed our electric motor in a way that it can freewheel without causing any problem when towing. So it's no problem at all to tow your vehicle back if you used all the energy while you're camping.
Yeah, terrific. Well, the L1 is certainly beautiful. It's striking. It's breathtaking. It's modern. It looks high tech, and it's also expensive. It's if I got the numbers right, listed between $125,000 and $150,000. And what drove the decision to kind of focus on that like higher end of the market as opposed to let's just take a normal RV and slap some solar panels on it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, new products and new technology, are expensive to build at first, and that's just sort of the way it is when you're trying to put something together for the first time that isn't necessarily made for that. Especially, you have to make some custom pieces, and suppliers aren't sort of necessarily ramped up for your use case, and so that just ultimately drives sort of new product cost up. And we are, and the fact that we also wanted to, because of that, we sort of also knew you need to, if you're going to sell at that level, you need to have a sort of fully featured, really great vehicle, and that we think we are on track to have. And so, there are, and the last part is, there are still significant sales at that price point. This is not, where we're talking about tens or, only tens of vehicles a year or hundreds even of vehicles a year. There are, we think that there are, many buyers out there in that price range. I should also add that there is a tax credit that would be applicable for both models. So that helps a little bit. But the real reason is, this is a new product and new technology, and it's easier to start at the higher end and move your way down than it is to go the other way. And one more thing, just sort of bring it to manufacturing. When you're a new company, manufacturing's hard. A lot of us know that from our days, at Tesla. And the bigger the volume, the harder it is. So again, if you can start with a sort of slightly lower volume but higher price points, that can also help your manufacturing, to get that line up and running. And again, then you increase efficiency over time, move maybe to the next product, which is maybe slightly lower cost, slightly higher volume. That is sort of the way to go about a manufacturing approach, I think, particularly for our sort of automotive world.
That does make a lot of sense. Starting with the lower volumes to simplify manufacturing at first. Yeah. Okay. And Lightship is still offering that 75% discount to podcasts on which it appears. Is that?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see about that.
I can't wait to get my demo unit. All right. Well, what have been a few of the most challenging engineering problems that your team has had to overcome?
Yeah, well, I think one that we are still overcoming is mass. We are, if you think about what we're offering, sort of a luxury travel trailer with all of the creature comforts, as we talked about, including sort of more solar, and then we're adding a large battery pack and an electric drivetrain. So both of which are fairly heavy components. And so we've got a challenge to figure out how do we keep our vehicle to, the gross vehicle weight to something that is reasonable to still tow, but also, provide all that functionality that we've been talking about. It's extremely challenging. I sort of joke with my team that, we get away a little easy on this one because, those software bits and controllers are not that heavy. I joke, it's like, software, 0 kilograms. So
add as many electrons as you want.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is, we're going to need to look for ways, how can we use software to sort of help reduce mass by doing some clever algorithms or, and eliminating something else, right? Some other hardware. And so it's going to come back to us anyway, because this is, needs to be a well-integrated product. And, this is a team effort. So the mass will not be something that we can hide from. It may be a little indirect, but it will be a challenge for all of us, including us in the controls and software world.
When do you anticipate that the first units will be available for purchase?
Yeah, I think we are looking to deliver first units in 2025. And we'll start slow and sort of ramp up. But we're taking reservations now. We you can go to our website and put a reservation in, and we've got still some work to do, but we hope that in 2025 we're sending vehicles out the door for customer delivery.
Awesome.
Yeah, and most of that year is probably already reserved. So
really,
we've had great interest so far, and we've been doing some events, and really besides sort of the reservations, we've also had just great feedback from customers, both new to the RV world as well as folks who've been RVing for years. Just find it to be a great product and a really great idea, and so we're really feeling good about some of the early feedback we have.
Terrific. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, specifically within the context of your role as an engineer, what is one thing that frustrates you and one thing that brings you joy?
Well, there's probably many frustrations, but I'll see if I can at least refer to one that is maybe has come up recently. Is just when we are trying to move fast, but someone you are working with outside the company is slow. Our speeds don't match. And when speeds don't match, you get some drag. So if you go back to our trailer and hitch analogy, we need help. And we there's a lot of great suppliers out there thanks to the EV proliferation of EVs. There's a lot of great components that we can buy. But when we're trying to move quickly to proof of concept and to keep our business going, sometimes others aren't, willing or able to move quickly. The size of the company matters. There's a lot of factors here. So sometimes there's just some frustration that, we're kind of waiting, sit and wait for an answer. And ultimately sometimes because of that, and even if we get an answer, the answer you get might be, it takes too long. And so because of that, sometimes we have to just do it ourselves. And, that is a bigger engineering effort, of course. But sometimes it results in a better product. It's better integrated in the end if you can get past that design phase, and sort of come up with something, rather than buying, you might have to make it. And let's explore those things to sort of ease some of the frustrations that you might have with long lead times or, you're not, unresponsive suppliers or, sort of related to the timing.
Sure.
As far as joy, I think, seeing something work for the first time, that is still, I've been an engineer for quite a while now, and I never, it always feels great, whether that's powering up a circuit board just on your desk even, or it's an entire power system of an RV, coming alive, which, we had happen, kind of early this year. Those are just great moments as an engineer. It's like, here's something that I contributed to, that we as a team built together and designed together. And look at it, it's actually working. We can, it's just, it doesn't get old. So I really enjoy that as an engineer. And even in management of engineering, which is more of my daily life these days, I still love going down and, watching and turning it on for the first time, or, even control it myself. I I still like to get my hands dirty for sure. And that has been also a lot of fun here at Lightship, because I was involved so early, I was able to, really put my design engineering hat back on for a while anyway. And I've started to take it off a little now as we get a little bigger, but I'm still pretty involved in design and, and so getting those moments where we turn something on or get something working, they're awesome.
Totally agree with you. I think creation is in our DNA as engineers. We're at Pipeline, we've historically just done engineering services work for other companies. They'll come to us, we need this, we need that, and we'll engineer it for them. We started to design a few of our own products over the past year and a half, and there's one in particular that we're working on right now. Every time I see an update, one of the engineers they'll call me up and say, "Hey, I've made some progress. Do you want to see this?" "Yes, I want to see it." And he'll bring it up and I'll be like, "Oh, that's so cool." I just get giddy, like seeing this thing come to fruition. It's so fun. I love that process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's great. And we're going to be looking forward to next year when we build, right now we have a single complete prototype. We have sort of pieces of other prototypes. We have a single complete prototype. We're going to be looking really forward to early next year when we have multiple beta vehicles and, we've got them doing different testing and engineering use cases and, things will be working, but they will also be breaking. And, it'll be also fun to sort of find the breaks and fix those things, improve on your design and iterate. So yeah, I really look forward to that as well.
Great. All right. Well, Troy, this has been just a delight. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing a little bit about yourself and Lightship and the L1. Super cool product. For sure, everyone go check it out at lightshiprv.com, and we'll have a link in the show notes as well. Troy, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's a great way to get a hold of me personally. Certainly look on our website too, as Aaron mentioned. We're hiring. I want to put a plug in for that. We are looking for people who are excited about what we're working on and like to do engineering. I've been hiring on my team, but we have plenty of roles open across the company, and so you can go find those on our website. And there's a general email address there as well that if you need to get a hold of me, you could do that through the Lightship website also. But LinkedIn is a great way to find me.
All right. Well, Troy, is there anything else that we should talk about that we haven't already hit on?
I think that was a good conversation. I can't wait to get some RVs out there and let everyone experience them for themselves. But I think it's gonna be awesome, and I'm super jazzed to be part of it. Also, really happy that you invited me to speak to you today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I can't wait to see the product out in the wild myself. Very cool. Yeah. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.